Welcome and welcome to those of you online. This is the last Wednesday of the month, so we're joined by groups in different towns like Norman and Gunnison and Telluride. And actually, Naples joins us tomorrow night. So, welcome to all of you. We've been unpacking this incredible text. This is just volume 1 of the 3 volumes. I know, we'll have it memorized by the time we're done. Yeah, in our tradition, they technically do memorize it. I was watching some video of the little reincarnation, Tuku Targo. Little boy, he's like 5 years old. He's got his little bell, and he is just whipping through pages of text. He's 5 years old, and he's doing his prayers. Just, yeah, pretty incredible. So, but just a quick review. This is the Stages of the Path to Enlightenment, the Lamrim Chenmo. It's literally an organization of the essence of all of the Buddhist teachings in one systematic path. And in this path, it allows us to kind of see where we're at on that path. And whatever exercises or practices or teachings we received, we can see where that fits into on this path. And we look at 3 different types of motivation. So sometimes called the small, medium, and great scope, or the initial, intermediate, and what do they call? What's the other fancy way of saying that? Yeah, intermediate and highest motivation. So the initial level of motivation, they call the small scope, is really the idea of using the life that we have to really at least get a better next life, or at least as good a life, that we can continue on a path, that we can help in this lifetime kind of ease our struggles, find some peace, and lay a good foundation so I'm not ruining this life. I'm not wasting it. That, if in fact there's something beyond this body, I'm setting myself up for a nice transition to that next one. So that's the initial, and that's really based on ethics, ethical living. It's refuge in ethical living. It's refuge relying upon a path that can really relieve some of the suffering in our current life, as well as a strong foundation for the transition. So we have to have some reliance on that, some idea that it's going to be effective. And the reason they lay out this initial and then intermediate and so forth is the idea that we really want to start where we are. And we don't want to just take anything on faith, and we don't want to just say, oh yeah, I'm going for full Buddhahood. I read it in a book, or this Lama told me, so yeah, that's the way it works, and go for it. Probably not going to be very successful. Probably not. For us to really be successful in a path, we need to have a faith in it. It needs to be reliable. It needs to be something we've tested. It needs to be something that holds up. It needs to be something that actually works for us in our life. And so you only gain that confidence with practical application. You only gain that confidence by seeing it deliberately work. So you start where you're at. And so the initial one is, when we're thinking about ethics alone. So the basic premise is that all happiness comes from virtuous activity, and all suffering comes from non-virtuous activity. Pretty straightforward. So, and it's testable. Is that true? Is it true? Does that work in my life? If I do things that I feel good about, do I find more inner peace and happiness? And if I do things I don't feel good about, do I find more struggle and suffering in my life? Is that true? Well, it's testable. You could try it out. Okay. So that really first intermediate initial stage is to start getting some reliance on a path, so that these teachings make sense. They make sense. They hold up. I can debate it. I can think about it, I can contemplate, I can meditate on it. And does it hold up? And if it doesn't hold up, then we have a problem. Why would I waste my time doing something that doesn't hold up? It's not going to be very effective for us. So at our monastery, they'll debate 6 to 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. It's no fun debating with Tibetans. I'm just going to tell you that. Because they're good. And they'll paint you in a circle. And paint you in a corner, not a circle. They'll paint you in a corner. They really parse things apart, and they want to make sense. It's got to hold up to reason. So, yeah, does it make sense? So, you'll notice that when you look at Buddhism, it's really scientific based. It's really looking at what are the afflictions of the mind, what are the problems, and, can I trace that back to something? So, first we have to see if it makes sense. If we see it makes sense, then we try it out. And then if it seems reasonable that having good virtuous activity can bring some happiness in life and non-virtuous brings some suffering, well, we can test it. You can start doing some virtuous things and stop doing the things that you don't feel good about and see how that works. Now, if you've succeeded in that and you started to notice, when I do things that I feel good about instead of just things that make me feel good, and there is a difference. Do things I feel good about, not just things that make me feel good. If we really get that difference, then even the things that feel good can be virtuous. If we're looking at what our motive is. The things we feel good about are things that we show up in a way that is in alignment with virtue, with good ethics, with value, with meaning and purpose in our life. That's why we do those things. And a lot of the things that make us feel good, we can do with good motivation. It's a win-win. But also, conversely, the things that don't intrinsically feel good can be something we feel good about. Showing up or getting up at 3 in the morning for your partner when you don't want to. Doesn't intrinsically feel good. But you'll probably feel pretty good that you got up when they didn't feel well and you got them, what they needed and cared for. Your child in the other room, it's something we feel good about. So the things that happen in life give us an opportunity to show up in a way that we'll feel good about. So we can test this. So having done that, we may start to notice that, the more that I'm on this path, it's, making some sense, and I'm living more ethically, and I'm finding more peace, I'm simplifying. Well, now I'm ready to look at the intermediate level of motivation, which they'll call the middle scope. Now, for the middle scope, it's really looking at my motivation now is not just for a good next life. I just don't want, being a next good realm or good rebirth. I really want to be free of all this. I want to be liberated from all suffering. I want nirvana. I want to not have to come back life after life. I don't want to be held down by conditioned existence. I don't want to have habits in my mind that are dragging me around. That I want to be free of all this. That I really want to have the opportunity to be liberated from the cycle of conditioned existence. So that's a pretty big motivation, and it's hard to have that motivation if we don't even know if there is a cycle of existence, right? So entry point here is, well, in order to cultivate that kind of a desire, we need to first look at and identify our existence as it is. And is this okay? Is this good? Is this fine? And it seems pretty good most times, doesn't it? It seems pretty good a lot of the time, which is unfortunately the problem. I want to try to use the word that they got here. It's kind of a nice label. Okay. Becoming convinced of the nature of the path to liberation, right? So we want to be convinced that there is a path to liberation. And we want to start by thinking about the causes of suffering and how they place and keep us in cyclic existence. So in this case, you don't have to, at this point, really be convinced that there's liberation. You start with looking at, is the state that we're in satisfying? Is this okay? Is there suffering here? Is there dissatisfaction here? And what are the causes of those? So it's just starting there. And we're not going to get very far unless we start to really see that this isn't okay. I mean, if we're fine with this, we're not going to work very hard, right? I'll be planning my vacation to Hawaii or something, make a lot of money and be happy. If that works, then we're okay. And if that works, we're certainly not going to look for liberation. If that formula works for you, it's going to be hard to go anywhere but there. And so here the Buddha really started when he looked at Four Noble Truths. The first truth he talked about is what is often translated as the truth of suffering, dissatisfaction, unsatisfactoriness. He didn't start with, hey, here's a path to liberation, which would sound like a pretty good selling point, right? Hey, how about nirvana? We can bottle that stuff or something, right? We can have a marketing campaign. He didn't start there. He started with, hey, there's suffering, which is not such a good sales pitch. But he started there because unless we actually recognize this suffering, we're not going to be able to go down any path. We can't, because there's no way we're going to be able to put any effort in. And so he said, well, let's look at this thing that we call suffering or conditioned existence. What's the cause of our conditioned existence? If there's a freedom from conditioned existence, cyclic existence, samsara, I'm using a lot of different words for the same thing. What are these causes? First off, what is this suffering, and what are these causes? What propel us here? And so two things are commonly proposed. One is karma, and the other is afflictions. Karma and mental afflictions. Karma and mental afflictions. So karma, we've had lots of talks about karma, and karma gives rise to, all the phenomenon, how we experience phenomena and so forth in our lives. But the primary is really our afflictions, our mental afflictions. If we don't have the mental afflictions, if there's no seed for that, the karma is not going to make things happen. It's not going to propel us, in a sense. They have to work together. And primary is mental afflictions, because that creates more and more afflictions, more and more desire, more and more conditioning. So what's that mean when we talk about mental afflictions? One common way of talking about a mental affliction is that it takes our mind out of balance. It takes your mind out of balance. It disturbs the mind, kind of gets you off to one side or the other, a little exaggerated or a little out of a peaceful, calm state of being. So mental afflictions. And there's, root of mental afflictions, there's secondary, there's, they say 84,000. They always use that number a lot. We don't have that kind of time. There's these root 6 that are often talked about as the root. They give rise to all of the others. And actually, well, it can be 10. And I try to get away from all the techie stuff. 6 roots. The 5th, when we look at the 6th one, it actually has 5 parts to it. Wrong views, but let's keep this, here in the sense of I really want to dwell on one. I'm going to give time to the others, but really we can philosophically talk all day long about attachment or desire or mental afflictions. That doesn't necessarily help a whole lot. What helps a lot is, can I recognize the dissatisfaction in my own life? Can I recognize how my attachments create a lot more problems in my own life? That becomes pretty relevant. And most of the time we don't recognize that. Most of the times we're not even looking at how attachment causes suffering. We don't look at that. I'll tell you what, I was not looking at that yesterday when I was going for my Australian black licorice chunk from Trader Joe's, right? The first time. I did start to notice it about the third time. Because I told myself, well, I'm not going to have another one. I'm setting those aside. Then I was having another one. And this is really what we want to start focusing on, is how much our desires and attachments actually take us away from even who we want to be and how we want to be in the world. Let's start there. I'm sure that all of us, it's one of the common things I say, used to do it with my teenage kids in high school, is we can make a list of 10 things to do to improve your life, right? Anybody can make that list. Won't even take long. Can you do the list? And for me, I just find that is the fascinating journey in life. What is it that prevents me from doing what I know is healthy and good for myself? What is it? There's so many things I know, like I shouldn't, I had enough licorice and then I'm eating more. I mean, that's a very simple thing, but it happens again and again. I'm going to start getting healthier. I'm going to start working out. Then I stop doing that. I'm going to meditate. How's that one? I know that meditation's good. Go to sit down, and then what happens? Oh, I'm not comfortable. My mind's all over the place. I need to get to that sock drawer. Right? There's just a whole bunch of stuff that pops up all of a sudden. Even though in my mind I said, well, I know this is good for me, it's healthy, it's what I want to do. I want to do this. And all that is required is sitting. And yet that can be incredibly difficult. And it's just sitting. Let alone, going to read something that you want to read, and then your mind's somewhere else and you can't read what you're going to read. Sitting down to do something and then knowing that the licorice is in the cupboard. Or the dessert, or that thing I want to do. There's all of these this disturbs us, right? It takes us out of our mind, of our peaceful mind, of what I want to do. Attachment really fuels a lot of suffering in our life. And we're attached to different things and different events, friends in our lives, right? Like my friend has all the happiness. I want some of their happiness. We're together, we'll be happy. And the basis of attachment, when I'm talking about attachment, we discussed this on another talk, is can you have wise desires, right? Can you have wise desires? What we're talking about is a grasping attachment born of mental affliction, of delusion, that something, I'm exaggerating its qualities, I'm exaggerating and projecting certain qualities on these things, that there's some intrinsic happiness or joy that's in this thing, person, event, that's going to really make me happy. That's the delusion. You can have a desire, for example, a desire to cultivate compassion for the benefit of all sentient beings, born of wisdom, knowing that we're interdependent and we're in this together, and that is something that can be a really good motivation. Again, as long as we don't get attached to it. Right? Attached then puts a false sort of constricted way of being, even on a good desire. So when we're using the word attached, we're really talking about coming from a state of delusion. And out of that state of delusion, you'll notice a lot of suffering is born in very simple activities, which we don't normally notice. So I'm just going to ruin your day. We could take a walk. Taking a walk's a nice thing, right? Taking a walk can be a really pleasant. I like taking a walk. Tibetan, we call it chom chom. Take a chom chom. Yeah, get a chom chom. It's a pleasant walk. Do that in the evenings. Nice. Well, if you have to walk 10 miles to get somewhere because the car's broken down, that walk may not be very fun. 100 degrees walk may not be very fun. Short distance could be nice. Could hurt your foot. It could be a difficult thing. The walk itself can be pleasant or it can be unpleasant. Too much of it can be really unpleasant. Sitting down after you're tired from a long walk can be quite pleasant for a little while. And then sitting down is going to be unpleasant, isn't it? Everything that we do, you're going to notice a dissatisfaction pretty quick. I was in the car coming back from the airport in Denver, and it was kind of warm. And I get in the car, it's hot, and now I'm uncomfortable. It's hot. You know, you turn on the air conditioner, and I notice, well, it's starting to get too cold now. Right? I've had other times where I've gotten in a car where it's windy and cold outside, and so you're just sitting in the car, but the windows are up and the sun's coming in, then you're uncomfortable and you're too hot. Then you're too hot. It's sweaty. It almost becomes unbearable. You'll kind of start to notice that when are you ever just okay for any long period of time? I built a fire yesterday in the rain. It was really nice, cozy. After a while that, got too hot. If you get too close to the fire, it gets too hot. Get too far away. See how this attachment of the mind, it starts attaching to, well, I'm going to be really happy with this, I'm going to like that, and trying to find this zone of comfort. And if I can just keep rearranging things, I'm going to be comfortable. And so these are just in physical zones, right? Physical zones of, I'm too tired because I walked too far. Or, wow, I've been sitting all day, I really need a walk. And I know this apparently doesn't hold true, Aaron, with bicycles, because I'm sure just riding a bike anytime has got to be nothing but wonderful, I know. So there are actually, believe it or not, other people that don't like to ride bikes in the snow and find it challenging. But when we start to then look in our life, well, what is it? Why can't I just be comfortable? Why can't I just sit without any radio, no TV, no newspaper, and enjoy a cup of tea? The tea that I like. Why is that so difficult? And is it difficult to quietly be still and enjoy a cup of tea? Your favorite tea. Or does our mind say, well, I need the news on, or I need to read something? Or, is my mind going somewhere else to things I have to do before I finish my tea? The mind's constantly attaching to and looking for something out there that's going to make you feel better or things to avoid. Aversion's another way of being attached. I'm very attached to that not happening. Right? That's going to be really uncomfortable. That's going to be terrible. And, but see, most of the time we don't recognize any of this. We don't even recognize that we're prisoners in our own mind. That I can't even do what I want to do. I can set the strongest motivation today to wake up and I'm going to do this and this and that. And I might even do it for a day or two. And then what happens? Or I'm going to tell myself I'm just going to sit and relax and be attentive to someone today, and listen and not talk much. Can we do that? Or is our mind habitually dissatisfied? Habitually projecting and labeling and thinking about what's next? What activity? And even if we get what we want, the hedonic treadmill is a really classic example. I like the hedonic treadmill. Hedonic treadmill is the idea that stimulus-driven pleasure, the next one, the next one, the next one. I mean, could you guys imagine driving a Ford Pinto again? That could be difficult for some people. And yet it's a car. It starts, right? It's got tires. Well, don't get rear-ended, right? Okay, bad example. Ford Pintos are a little dangerous. Right, didn't they have the tank in the rear end? Yeah. Vega, Chevy Vega. There you go. I'm dating myself. But, you know, it's like what people get accustomed to, then things that used to be quite wonderful become almost intolerable. And then our mind goes to, well, if I drive that car, what's somebody going to think about me? There's my mind. Attached to looking a certain way, showing up in a certain way, back to the 8 worldly concerns. And if we don't really start to recognize and see in our own life how much my mind exaggerates and projects onto things and drags me around to a state of constant dissatisfaction, it's going to be hard to want to break free, because the delusion is this is really cool. Because, you know, we could look at all the good things, right? I mean, this is a beautiful place to live. It's a very beautiful place to live in. And in proportionally, we have it really well, right? We have it really well. In this beautiful valley, a really giving community. It's a great community to live in. And yet, in spite of all this, when are you satisfied? When are you at peace? Or are we subject to mental afflictions, again, born out of, I would say, even attachment, of worry, of stress, of anxiety, of fear? Anybody have those mental afflictions? In spite of, we live in a great place. We live around some, really great little community. So, if we're going to really want liberation from samsara, conditioned existence, we're really looking at our mind. How about liberation from my mind? My conditioned karma and klesha mind that doesn't allow me, when I'm actually in touch, to be the person I want to be. Well, unless I start recognizing it's not allowing me, it's hard to work with that. So I have to take a point. And what we want to do here is not get into a morbid, often people, Buddhists, man, they're always talking about suffering. You guys are suffering. You're always suffering. It's terrible. It must be terrible to be a Buddhist. You guys are suffering. Yeah, that's what Buddhists do. They suffer. And so to look at this is not to sit there and feel depressed. It's actually quite conversely the opposite. It's that by noting how I am being drugged around by exaggerations and mental afflictions, and starting to see things a little more accurately, I can actually have more freedom. And I can have more peace of mind. And I can notice that these mental afflictions, which seem like my friend, are in fact just creating more suffering. And then they exaggerate things, right? I mean, we really get into the idea that, I just couldn't live without this person. I can't even imagine them in my life. And then they're not in your life. And we can imagine. We can move on. We exaggerate qualities with people in our life, with things that we've created, with things that we've done, to these very layered web that we weave. And then anytime anything goes astray, we're afflicted. I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm worried, I'm scared, happy. And we keep trying to play all the strings, and those just make you hungrier. When you water an attachment, it grows. It doesn't get satisfied. You never sit there and think, I've had enough, until you've had too much. And then it's uncomfortable. And when something is pleasant, what do we want? I want some more of that. And when something's unpleasant, I don't want that. And it just creates Even, my brother-in-law, Bill, he makes a wicked pecan pie. I'd never had pecan pie before his. And he made it. It's really good stuff. But right now, just calling it to mind, you know what happens? I want some pecan pie. Maybe a little dab of whipped cream. And there's a desire there, and it's it can be unsatisfying here. And so if we really want to find some liberation, first we have to acknowledge that we're a prisoner. We have to notice this. We have to notice that most of the time that I think I'm feeling a lot of pleasure, what I'm really feeling is an absence of suffering, which is interesting. And that absence of suffering is temporary, and that desire doesn't quite get enough, and it creates more. And this is what perpetuates more and more karma, more and more mental afflictions, and it compels us to do more. And then there's so many layers to this attachment. One of them's habits. We just got habits. We've watered them so much, we're kind of attached. That's what we do. That's my comfort zone. That's what I want to do. And even though I want to do something different today, it might as well be impossible. Because I'm so entrenched in this is my habit, and this is my ritual before I go to bed. This is my ritual before I do this, whatever it is. Every year I do this, or everything I do that. And habits and tendencies. And then we really think we are that way, right? Morning person, night person. And yet everything is changeable. Trust me, you go to the monastery, you start waking up at 5 in the morning, you become a morning person. It shifts. And have a job where you work nights, you become a night person. It shifts. Our problem is we get like, I'm like this, and this is the way I am. And we forget we're changing all the time, and things change all the time. But ultimately, we need to start paying attention to what are my habits and tendencies and these deluded attachments that keep dragging me around. And if I can start noticing them, I can start challenging them. You may discover that, I'll just use a simple thing, because I noticed this a lot with my own process. I stopped eating after midday when I was a monk, so I'd get hungry, and I would notice hunger. And then I would notice hunger goes away. I also noticed I ate a whole lot more than I ever needed to. I'm doing that again, by the way. Where's that discipline I used to have? But what you'll notice is that my mind's really attaching to these things, but they're not inherently going to be rewarding in any way. And if you can step back, you can notice, is that really that important? Is that really that big a deal? Can it come and go? And can I still have some peace of mind? Can I stop acting on every impulse that comes to mind? Can I stop acting with every desire? And can I be a little more observant and choose to do things that are a little healthier anyway? Or just for the sake of it, just to notice that it'll come and it will go. And what are the qualities I keep projecting on these things that aren't true? That's the biggest problem. We really think these things are going to make us so much happier. And intellectually we can talk all day long about, you can have a nice house and be unhappy. You can have a little house and be happy. You can have a little house and be unhappy. And you can have a nice house and be happy. We can intellectually talk about that all day, but that doesn't change anything for people. What changes is observing in your own life how much our mind is dissatisfied and how much it tells you, you just want a little more of that. You just should maybe do this. And how much is your mind controlling you versus you being able to control your mind? We start recognizing that. We start to see we have a little prison here. And that's what we want to be liberated from. Another way of really looking at nirvana is being liberated from our own mind, of the deluded mind that's dragging us around all the time. But in order to recognize it, we need to pay attention to that in our everyday life. So the idea of the Lamrim teachings are to do meditations on what we're talking about, to take some time each day. And it doesn't have to be long, wake up in the morning, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and call to mind, wow, what are the dissatisfaction things in my mind that are going on? Why is it difficult to sit here? What do I want to do today? And is there something that's going to pull me around? And to take a little time and to unpack, what are my attachments? And do they ever bring any real happiness? Do they? Intellectually, we could say no. But that doesn't change us. What changes us is a direct realization of that. And the only way to get the direct realization is take a little analytical meditation time, 5-10 minutes a day this week, and just do a little meditation, and in that meditation take some time to observe, what are my attachments, and how are they dragging me around, and how are they causing more desire in my life that keep me from being happy. And then meditate on that. Just see them. We start to identify them, then it gives you a little juice when they pop up. When it pops up, you go, oh, yeah, that's my mind saying that this is that. It's a nice story. Tubed Children, one of her, she brought up an example. Sometimes, there's a question that was asked her about resistance. Isn't an attachment when you resist doing things that are good for you? Right? So sometimes, and she was using an example of meditation. You're going to meditate, and your mind's going, my legs hurt, cushion's not so, and, I don't really have that time, and, all the stuff the mind does, right? And you'll notice there's some resistance. There's some resistance to doing the things that you're going to do. In my case this morning, for example, I was going to do some yoga exercise, and I didn't do it. My mind said, you got some other things to do. I was feeling a little lazy. That's another attachment, laziness. So I didn't meditate. I didn't do the yoga thing after my meditation. But I observed that, and I didn't do it. There's a resistance, right? But the resistance is really an attachment. In my case, my attachment was, just feeling I felt really good and lazy after my meditation, and I was thinking about coffee. So those are all attachments that were taking me away from what I know I would have felt a lot better had I done the yoga exercises. I'd have felt better. It's a good commitment. And I know that that's a good result. But no cause, no result. I want to feel strong and healthy and well, but I don't want to do the work. No cause, no result. And after I do it, I typically feel it, but I didn't do it. So the idea of resistance. And so she suggests, her friend says that she talks to her mind. Which is an interesting technique. Your mind says, I don't want to meditate. I don't have time for that. My legs hurt. And she actually talks to your mind and says, yeah, I hear you. I know. Sometimes it's challenging. But it's healthy. And I think, we're just going to do this now. We're just going to meditate. And we're going to relax. And it'll be okay. That's an interesting technique. I just heard that today. So I hadn't tried it yet. But what happens is it exerts some ability. And I like the idea of that. Of having some free will in your own life, of your acknowledging that your mind's saying, it's like a little kid, right? I don't want to do that. And you go, yeah, I hear you. I get it. It's kind of a drag, but this will be good for us, And afterwards, we'll get some dessert. But let's sit right now, and let's sit, and to be able to do that. So I like the idea of that. I like the idea of I have been in counseling where they do this sort of self-talk thing. But just to acknowledge that the mind's going like a little kid complaining and doing stuff, and acknowledge that and go, yeah, okay, I see where you're at. But, I bet you we'll all feel better if we do this. You know, it's like the wisdom of a parent, and we're taking care of ourselves, and we're acknowledging that there's this mind that wants to do other things. But those things are not healthy for us. And they're not going to provide what we think they will. And so the grandfather of mindfulness, for that other quote, you know, is going to take care of us and say, let's do this anyway. And so, you know, before I got into the list of all the afflictions and these types of things, I think as we enter into this phase of the teachings, it's really just important to take some time and start knowing in your own life, you know, where's my mind get me in trouble? And do I want to continue to live like this? You know, and so much in our world is done with distraction that people become anesthetized to their own suffering. Just anesthetized, because you're just doing other things. You're distracted. You don't even... So much of our day, we're not even there. You know? I mean, much of our meditation, we're not even there, right? And when we're trying to concentrate, you know, we're not there. So we're so distracted that most of the times we don't really get that glimmer into how things actually are. And we're constantly playing a game that doesn't work to try to find some satisfaction in things that can't provide it. But we just keep playing the game out of habit, out of sheer habit and training. And we're trained that way since kids. You know, we're really trained that way. The reason you have a rare and precious human rebirth, one of these main factors, is because all of you sitting here have recognized this. There's a lot of humans that will never recognize this. But you have. You've noticed that I've jumped through all the hoops. I've accomplished this and I've accomplished that. And I've gotten this relationship. I've done all this. And yet, my mind's still dragging me around. I'm not finding tranquility and peace, meaning in life. There's got to be something more. You crack the door. You got to peek. And you say, there's something more to this thing we call life. This body's going to come and go. Why am I here? What's the purpose of this life? How can I make it meaningful? And by cracking that door, we have that opportunity. And it's like we get a little glimmer. Oh, yeah. And when we're cognizant, when we are mindful, when we are attentive, it's so easy. I mean, you can step back and watch your mind go through all this ridiculous stuff. I mean, how many times in our mind have we watched our mind go through a silly attachment and attraction to something, and you just know that's just ridiculous, and you do it anyway? You just do it anyway, out of sheer habit. That's what I do. You know, I was at my daughter's house. She has like 300 and whatever channels, right, when I was younger. And people just flip through channels all day long. They don't watch anything in particular, but they're sure there's something on somewhere. You'd think out of 300 channels or however many. And just flip, right? Or, you know, just the, you know, turning on noise just so, you know, we're distracted from something. There's things that we do all the time that we know, you know, just kind of silly, ridiculous, but we do it anyway. Is that necessary? Or can I find some inner peace and some tranquility? Can I be happy sitting and having my cup of tea? There's a day that will never come again. Do I really want to waste it chasing a bunch of desires and habits and tendencies and fears and angers and anxieties? Really? This day is never going to come again. Or do I really want to make the best use of the life that I do have and the time that I have? You know, we'll sit there and spend a lot of our life working. Why do we work? Why do we work? Sometimes we work so we can have that vacation. Or we work so we can have that retirement. And then when we get that vacation or that time, then what do? We distract ourselves. if we can make it that far. This life that we have right now in a rare and precious human rebirth is the incredible vessel for enlightenment. Right now, you have it. So, one thought is, rather than spend all of my time complicating my life, doing more stuff, trying to get ahead, how about simplifying my life? Right? Instead of asking, what do I need to do to be happy? What do I need to not do to be happy? What do I need to not do to be happy? You can be quite a bit happier with a more simple life. It can still be a meaningful life. It can be productive. It can help others, but simplified. And if, the whole point of this life, what's I'm going to hack a Greek quote. The whole point of the political life is for the contemplative life. Meaning the whole point of our existence of getting a job, being able to eat, being healthy is so that we can make the time to be contemplative, to find the meaning in our life, to find the essence of our life. And it's fine because we're sitting there trying to fit 10 minutes of meditation into a busy life. Instead of, well, I've got food and a job so that I can make some time to meditate. Because this is the essence of life. If I can meditate, then I can actually tame my mind. I can pay attention to my life. I can actually be a participant in my life. I can actually start having my mind do what I want to do. How's that? But that won't happen if we're distracted and run around all the time. Won't happen. And it won't happen if we don't start to really notice that we're a prisoner of it. Because it takes an effort. It takes an effort. And you're not going to do the effort unless you see that there's a problem. I'm not going... I went to the dentist when I was 22. 22? Yeah, I think I was 22. I hadn't really been to the dentist much other than when I had my teeth all knocked out and stuff when I was younger. But, we were raised didn't have much money, and I had a big accent. These teeth used to be perfectly straight. Anyway, they all got knocked out. So, I digress. The point being, 22, I get a job, I'm getting my life together, and I have a toothache. And so I ask about going to a dentist. Some friends recommend a dentist. I go to the dentist, and I hadn't been to a dentist on my own ever. And so the lady's there, when's the last time you've been to a dentist? And well, when they knocked my teeth out, a long time ago. She goes, well, what brought you in? And I thought that was the most insane question. Well, it hurts. Why else would anyone go to the dentist? Right? What kind of question is that? What brought me here is it hurts. We're not going to make any drastic change in our life unless there's a problem. Right? How many people here ever did anything without a deadline? Come on. Right? Rarely do we do anything because it's a good idea. It's pretty rare. We generally do things because some strong motivating force, which could be a good idea, a passionate thing towards something, a creative thing towards something, a deadline, pain, things like that motivate us to make change. But for us to do the effort to start to gain control of our own mind, we got to notice there's a problem. So with the dentist, what I did learn after all the pain of them fixing me up is that if I went every 6 months, I didn't have to have the pain. And I'll tell you, pretty much most of my life from 22 on, every 6 months, I was at the dentist because I did not like the pain. And I've never had to have any other problems, with the... Likewise, if you start to pay attention to your mind, you're going to find a lot less problems. You're going to have a lot less pain. You're going to have a lot less fear, a lot less anxiety, a lot less worry, and a lot less stress. because you're going to start to see things more accurate, and you're going to start to notice that we're exaggerating everything. We're exaggerating everything. It's fascinating to watch people exaggerate. We all do it too, don't we? Man, it was the best day ever. The most delicious pie I've ever had. Yeah. I can't wait to see you. Liar. Bet you can. Bet you can. Our language exudes exaggeration. Right? It just exudes it. It's just dripping. And so, if we start paying attention to reality and start noticing that my mind's going to kick up and scream and want to do certain things, I might start to notice that, they're not the healthy impulse. It's not the thing I really want to do. And guess what? I don't have to act on it all the time. But also, herein, noticing it's a gradual path. If we try too hard, too forceful, not very successful. It's a gradual path. Every day, that's why I suggest, take 10 minutes and just make sure that you do a meditation. If you do your normal meditation and then add like maybe 5 or 10 minutes and call to mind my attachments, my dissatisfied mind. How does it keep causing problems? But really bring that to mind. It's called contemplative meditation, analytical meditation. And then you'll start to notice how ridiculous some of the things are that we do, which might empower you to not do them. It just might. But without bringing it to mind, we're not empowered to not do them. We don't even notice them. We're just doing them out of sheer habit. We do so much out of sheer habit and tendencies. So, as we enter this portion, it's just building upon what we know. And again, whether you're Buddhist or not Buddhist, whether you believe there's a next life or not a next life, or enlightenment or not enlightenment, I think we can all recognize that we are somewhat prisoners of our own habits and conditionings and desires and attachments. And those desires and attachments are based on things that aren't true. I mean, if it was based on true, let's go with it. But you're not going to find it's true. There's nothing outside of you that intrinsically has that happiness you're looking for. There's nothing. And if you find it, let me know. I've been looking for 30 years. And if we start to understand, we really start to understand that, wow, it's just my mind, and I can work with that. Slowly, easily, gently. Kale, slowly, slowly. That's what all the Tibetan lamas are. You get all fired up. You tell them, I'm going to go do this retreat. I'm going to do it. And they look at you and they go, Kale. Slow down there, little buck. Start where you are. Be compassionate with yourself. And know that we're all in this together. And that all of our minds are messy. And so, if today I didn't do one thing I would have done, that's great. It's little steps. And then there's a path that we can cultivate. But it really starts with acknowledging that there's somewhere to go and there's some place we want to get away from. And so do we want to really start to notice that our mind's dragging us around or not? It's a good place to start. And then, is it necessary? So the next step here is to notice how these mental afflictions, we'll go through root 6, how they continually increase all the other afflictions and keep dragging us around. They create samsara. They create conditioned existence. We won't have conditioned existence if there's no cause for it. So I can get rid of the mental afflictions and the karma, and there's no cause for it. But these afflictions just water and nurture more and more and more. So, but I like to end on a happy note. And that is that recognizing this changes everything. I mean, you get it right now. Just here in this moment, right? Didn't you feel a little bit liberating? And we just want to keep watering that seed of truth. And knowing, yeah, today I'm going to I'm going to step forward now. There's a lot of our teachers, we're pretty hardcore. I'm a gentle guy. And they'll say that, this is not a passive thing, that, if you don't start watering these seeds, you don't get anywhere. And I believe in a developmental approach personally, and I have found in my own experience that that we're always moving forward. Any water you put on these seeds is not wasted. It's not wasted. As long as you got your toe in the water on the path of Dharma, as long as you know somewhere in your mind that this stuff outside is really not the way it is, that keeps you on a path. If you got your toe on the path, it's going somewhere. So be gentle with ourselves. Really be gentle and know that, yeah, you know what, I may screw up today. I may get angry. I may not meditate today. I may whatever. That's because of our mind. And every day we are born anew. It's what you do today that matters most. Every breath's a new moment and a new opportunity. We're never wasting that moment. I mean, we do waste them. But by watering the seeds, those seeds are always growing. So really be gentle with ourselves. I don't think people get far by being too forceful, and I don't think anyone gets far out of beating themselves up. It's not very beneficial. Beating yourselves up, just another mental affliction. It's all wrapped up in self and self-attachment. It's like a nun friend of mine told me about the High Lama. I think I've told the story before, but it's a great one. It's so clear. Where this High Lama throne, giving the teaching, very formal. And the translator has to translate whatever he says. He can't give commentary. He just says what he says. That's how you do it. And so he made a mistake when he's giving the teaching. The translator's like, ooh, I don't think that's right. But he's the Lama and I'm the translator, right? And it was an awkward moment, and the translator, in Tibetan went back to him and told him this and that, and he goes, oh no, that's wrong. And then he just laughs, and he says, no, not a Buddha yet. And he moves on. It's not about pride or ego. It's, not a Buddha yet, made a mistake. Giggles, and moves on. And that's really, we're not Buddhas yet, and I think our big problem often in the West is we hear these great teachings and about compassion for all sentient beings, this and that, and the wisdom of non-attachment and so forth. And then we think, because I heard this teaching, I should be able to do that. And I start comparing myself with enlightened beings. I'm going to lose. I'm not an enlightened being. I still was munching down the licorice last night. I'm just saying. And I know better. I've been doing this for a while. So we start where we are. We start where we are. But what His Holiness points out is that these patterns are very weak in us. They're very weak because we don't pay attention to them. These habits and delusions are very strong because that's what we water. But what happens is the more that we pay attention to these hold up because they're based in reality and they're true and they become strong very quick. And the more that we pay attention to these delusions, they fall apart. They fall apart because they don't know. There's nothing for them to stand on. And so that shifts. But we start where we are. And if we eat too much licorice, it's okay. I forgave myself and had another one. But consciously aware that, not going to make me healthy. I'm be better off if I did my yoga tomorrow. So, but to have that state of mind to where it matters, it's important, but it's not worth beating myself up over. And that, keep moving forward. Now it's a new moment. And my previous moments don't need to dictate my future moments. Every moment's an opportunity. And just remember that. Be gentle with ourselves, you know. Show up, do the best we can every day, you know. And that is a monumental effort. Went a few minutes over. But the dentist story was worth it, wasn't it? All right. So we will, wrap up with a little dedication. What I would like to do in the future, with your permission, that's one of the things, as we develop this center and as we really pull together to have a group, I want to make sure we meet your needs. So, we'll have some means pretty soon just to see if we want to have more activities with the Sangha that we can stay a little connected or support people in their meditation. And one of the things that I think would be nice is at the end of our teachings, if I finish on time in the future, hopefully, probably, it could happen, is anyone who's suffering, anyone that is going through a surgery or having a problem or so forth, we can hold them in our prayers and do a mala of prayers for them at the end, each time. So it's we can send prayers out to all those that need them. So I'd like to, start next week. We'll start making sure to have some time for that, so we can bring into our thoughts and prayers those that are in need. Okay. And for those of you who are interested, right afterwards, we'll have just a real short meeting on the monks' visit, just to update people. Since we didn't send a formal email out, we'll just have a short meeting. But we are going to host the monks from July 24th to August 1st. And create a Samandala and do a bunch of other activities. So it should be fun and healthy and meaningful and beneficial. All right, so let's do a little dedication of cultivating the merit and wisdom we have today and dedicating that to the benefit of all sentient beings. Let us dedicate the virtue and wisdom we have accumulated both individually and collectively, both today and throughout our lives. Dedicate this for the benefit of all beings. May all beings be free of suffering and find lasting happiness. And may we be able to use the virtue and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lives to purify our own minds, to cultivate our own path to liberation and complete Buddhahood of enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. Thank you all so much, and thank you online, and may you all be well, happy, try to stay out of trouble. Okay? All right. Take care.